I've got the, whoa, oh no. Hey, can you guys still hear me? Okay, I think I'm having some kind of technical difficulty here. So, no questions. I'm really surprised. I thought you guys would have questions. Because I didn't really prepare. Oh, are you kidding? There's no audio? Holy moly. Let me just check that out real quick. Testing. It says my mic's working. No, you're not getting anything? Okay. It might can't hear a word you're saying. Okay, just hold on 1 second. Let me just do something here. Yeah, I see. Just bear with me. Yeah, I'm not sure. I am not sure what's going on with my mic. It says that it's working. So you're still not hearing. God damn, it says that my mic is working. Test, test, test. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what the heck's happening. So can you guys now hear me? Okay, good, because I was getting messages I couldn't hear. Okay, great. So do we have any questions in the chat? Other now that I've completely embarrassed myself on YouTube? I don't know. Somebody earlier said that they couldn't hear. They didn't have any sound. It was probably one of my friends from OSA. So yeah, it's so humid here. I can't even tell you. I don't know if I'm sweating because I'm about to break out into a flop sweat, or because it's truly just the humidity. But the humidity is amazing. They're saying that we're going to have. They're saying that we're going to have a hurricane. It's going to start raining horribly in the morning, but I guess we'll have to see. But it's really like, oh my God, it's so sweaty. So come on, somebody bail me out here. Ask me a question. I think I already told you about my backdrop. I did the whole show on that. So. Oh, here's a question. Denver Stevio, thank you for bailing me out. How engaged were you with OSA while being involved in movie production? Well, that's a really interesting question. Okay, sorry. I'll get to that one. Okay, so OSA. So for maybe the first decade I was up there, I wasn't involved with those at all. I never interacted with them. The first decade that I was up there, Mike Rinder didn't even work for ROSA. He was the L. Ron Hubbard Personal Public Relations Officer, International, or in the acronym addicted world of Scientology. He was the LRH PPRO int, which is what Mike was doing when I first worked with him. As time went on, the message, the kind of mission would creep. And, Miscavige would always want to gather his smartest people together. So I was unfortunately identified as one of those people. And so I would do projects. I would do like, when Anonymous was attacking the church, I did a bunch of really cheesy, they were good production value, but they looked like bad, trailers from 50 science fiction movies, impugning an Anonymous, trying to say they were actually some dangerous organization when they were really just a disparate bunch of people who had all come together under the common theme of wanting to shut Scientology down. It wasn't that much. It grew over time. I mean, I certainly knew all the top people at OSA, and so yeah. And I did some review work on some of the hate sites, but I really tried to avoid all that stuff because I thought it was really distasteful even when I was in. I hated that they did all that stuff. You could say it's one of the reasons that I left. I don't have anybody storing questions for me here, so I know there's here's one. Okay, what project was I working on before leaving? Well, the most recent projects I had done was I went to, in like 2014, I went to LA to work with Miscavige on Narconon, and I helped redo the whole Narconon program. Then I went over and helped open Scientology Media Productions. Then I went back to Golden. So I was basically working on programming for the network. The way that it all sorts of breaks down, if you've ever watched Scientology, the Scientology network, if you could take it for very long. And they don't collect IP addresses. You don't have to give them your email address. You can actually go on and check it out. It can be very, very informational in terms of understanding the kind of propaganda that they make. I mean, I personally suggest everybody should go on the network and everybody should watch the episode on the Preservation Project, the all big vaults that they dig in the ground and they put all that stuff, because it's really fascinating. So I was Scientology Media Productions, they do all that kind of stuff. Anything that has like an episodic title, like, a tour of a church, or, the tours of all the different facilities and buildings, but then the specific, like, non-episodic stuff, the more film stuff they do up at Gold. And so I was working on some of those. I have a couple of those that I somehow ended up on my computer. And so I am going to be doing like response videos to those. They're based on essays that Hubbard wrote back in the, I guess in the 70s for the old Freedom magazine, not the new one. I'm sure I'm going to miss some of these questions. Oh, I don't want to answer this one. When is your book due to come out? I'm going to try to get it out by the end of September. It's almost done. It's actually, I'm just completing a second draft. It's a very edited second draft, and it should be up. And then I think I just, going through it and reading it to work on the second draft, I'm really happy with it. I mean, I literally sobbed like a baby when I got to the end, not because it was at the end, but I was just, boy, I really figured some shit out when I wrote it. I'm really looking forward to getting it out there. Renee B said, "Oh, this is nice. I'm getting a little coaching. Mitch, please slow down. It's a conversation amongst friends." That is so sweet. Thank you. Yeah, you could tell I'm a little nervous. It's not that I'm awkward at public presentation, but I am so a behind the camera person, so a one-on-one behind the camera person that it's and I kind of you have to be a little bit of a show off to do this, and I'm not really a show off. But thanks. If I ever start running too fast, just I'm happy to have the coaching. You're a doll for saying that. Yeah, yeah. Scientology Media Productions. That was a really interesting place to work. It was nothing like gold. That's my puppy in the background playing with a bone, which is about 3 times longer than the dog is. So you'll have to excuse the noise. Oh, thanks. I'm blushing. Yeah, what do we got here? In doing YouTube videos, just as is doing YouTube videos just as helpful as writing your book. You were excellent with your interview with Jeff Levin. Well, I think actually it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, when I made the decision at the beginning of lockdown that I was going to stop interacting with the Church of Scientology, I was going to stop working for them. I felt like I had jumped out of an airplane with an armful of silk and a sewing kit, and I was going to see if I could fashion a parachute before I hit the ground. And the ground is rushing up pretty quick. I haven't quite fashioned that parachute financially. I mean, I've definitely softened the landing in a lot of other ways. I literally sat on my sofa for a year and a half and I played Overwatch 12 hours a day. I don't want to get into a big gaming thing, but in a way, that game saved my life because it got me something to fixate on that kept me from sort of going way off the deep end. I was actually thinking of streaming on Twitch before I ever thought about YouTube. I was thinking of starting a gaming channel, streaming under the handle WOG, World's Oldest Gamer, but I just never did it. It was one of my fantasies was to make a mark as the world's oldest game fanatic. But so then I started writing the book, which was incredibly helpful. You start, my book is probably the only one written, and I'm not saying this to make it more important than other books because it's not by a long shot, but it's really the only one written by, I wanted to write a book while I was still going through it, while I was still decompressing, so I could read shit and say, no, that's bullshit. Go rewrite that. That's part of the dishonesty that you're still carrying around in your cult brand. So, but I didn't want to write it like everybody else. They're 10 years out and they write these books and they're looking back and they're reminiscing. And that's a great viewpoint. I mean, the hindsight that you're afforded by looking back with that space between you and that kind of trauma really helps give you a perspective that you couldn't otherwise have. And I'm sure, hopefully in 10 years, I'll write another book, but I wanted to write it while I was just right in it. Uh, and it feels that way. I mean, and fortunately, thanks to Mike Rinder, who helped find me some volunteer editors, I found 3 very talented people who were very well qualified to edit the book. So to answer your question, the YouTube community has actually been more helpful than writing the book. Like I first started posting to promote the book, which isn't even finished. I put that short promo that I did on my channel because I'd spoken with Aaron about it, and he's like, "Yeah, make some friends on YouTube so people know who you are when you release the book." Because I wanted to release me and it all at once. But then I met this community, many of whom were never in Scientology. It doesn't mean that they don't have their own relatable experiences. And I got to tell you, man, it's really been helpful. I really owe you guys a lot. I see some other questions. What does this say? After your book, do you have other projects in the work? I have another number of screenplays that I want to finish that I've been working for a while. That's always been my dream avocation. I mean, obviously, I've been in film since I've I've never had a job out of media since I graduated college. So I have that, and I have this my YouTube project, which I'm going to try to just ride to like hell all the way to the horizon and see where it goes. But and I kind of stopped looking for work because we're having this strike. So it's kind of ridiculous. But I have a bunch of projects I want to pitch. But right now I'm just doing this and finishing my book, and we'll see after that. And watching the ground rush up is really fun. So this is, yeah, but I can't even. Oh, oh, thank you. Are you're, oh, thank you so much for, I have been on a one-man campaign to get who is Lou as important of a hashtag as where's Shelley, because this whole story about Shelley disappearing, it's so much more complicated and lurid. All you ever hear about is that David Miscavige banished his wife because she pissed him off. Well, there's more to the story. I mean, he banished his wife, took up with his assistant, ordered his assistant to divorce her dying husband. I mean, are you getting the other facets of this? I mean, I know them really well. I've flew. I mean, I'm not going to get into great detail. You can read my book about the. I have a lot of detail about this, but I mean, I flew to the to England to the IS event on Tom Cruise's jet, not with Tom, but with Dave and Lou and a few other people. So, I had really unprecedented access. I mean, there's never any doubt in my mind that she is not his paramour, not his concubine, whatever you want to call it. Um, there is the slimmest of possibilities that Miscavige is completely asexual and that they have the most amazing platonic relationship of any two people ever. But nah, that is not it. But there, I've I've always thought that. Anyway, I appreciate you bringing that up. Would I do a video about it? Yeah, I might do that. I mean, I've spoken about it a lot. And there's information that I'm not going to talk about until my book's released, because I think it's information. They haven't done anything to forgive me, and I don't know if they will, because I left in good standing, and I left with David Miscavige having written to me as late as 2018, referring to me as a good friend. So I wasn't one of these people that was, they can't kick me out. I mean, they didn't kick me out, and then they can't say I'm nobody because I starred in that gold video, which is still on YouTube. So, and then I repurposed that video so it'll always be there in the reaction video I did. So I don't know how they would. It would be really hard, and I've never signed any. Like I don't have any NDAs with them about any of the kind of things I've talked about, but I think they might be concerned about some of the things that I know, so they're just backing off. So there's a few things that I'm just not going to say, because it's kind of like an insurance. Does that make sense? It's like an insurance. It's my insurance. I know some shit, and if they come after me, it's going to be very painful for them. So, what did Shelley do to get banished? Well, I wasn't actually. I mean, I knew Shelley in the early days. I think some of you know. I knew her more when I first went up there in the 90s, early two. I didn't see her a lot after that. She was around, but there was a point before she was banished where I would see Dave and Lou a lot more together than Shelley. But what did she do to get back? I think other people have told the story. I mean, as I understand it, but I'm telling it secondhand, which I don't really like doing secondhand stories. But as I understand it, she was helping to redo the organizing board. She was making some executive decisions, and it really pissed him off. But if you're on Dave's bad side, whatever you do is going to piss him off. And so he sent her away. But I also think he sent her away because he wanted to be with Lou. It's just, because it's, and plus I'd heard, and this is just a rumor, that Shelley had become extremely concerned that Dave was having an affair. I hate even calling it an affair, but it's just like, I mean, and I wouldn't even care. I wouldn't care that he's with Lou. I wouldn't care about any of that except for what he did to Shelley, and except that he's ruined so many staff members' lives for doing less than that. And it rises to such an incredible level of hypocrisy that I keep bringing it up. And we really need to start hashtag who is Lou. Like, that's what you need to be hearing on, on the Golden Globes, not just where's Shelley, because we know where she is. I ran into her. I'm sure you guys know it. I guess I'm probably the last person who's speaking out I ran into her in 2008. It's hard for me to date, but it must have been 2008. I was on my way up to Gold, and I stopped off at Redlands, California, and which is on the way to Gold. And it's also, if you look at the CST base up in Crestline, if you just follow the freeway down the map, the first real civilization you're going to come to is a town called Redlands. I ran into there. I stopped for lunch, and she was with the 3 people that she's reported to be with, one of whom was my auditor for years. She audited an RTC person who audited me and audited Jason Bouquet. And yeah, we just had a nice chat. It was a little awkward only because whenever you see staff in out of context, like it's not at an event, or it's not at Gold, or it's not at some other base, you just bump into them. It's really awkward. But then later I found out how awkward it was. She'd only been gone for 3 years at that point, and she was doing fine. But she didn't know it was going to be another 15 years that she'd be banished up there. So I doubt if she's doing fine today. I'm sure she's completely lost her mind. I mean, she's probably just kind of like a zombie. But and she wouldn't want to leave even if you offered it to her. Says it's just, that's what happens to your mind. Yeah, I am on Facebook. I used to kind of keep that a secret, but I don't give a shit anymore. I used to just kind of use Facebook for friends and family, but it's just like, whatever. Facebook is the matrix. But yeah, it's like, why not use it to our advantage? Blow drill. We used to shop. Oh, were you on staff or no? What, you used to shop at? Okay, so blow drill. Redlands is really nice. It's I wrote about it, kind of a funny story about Redlands in my book, because Redlands is like, that's where the mansion of the Kimberly Clark, the Kleenex people, like the Kimberly mansion is there, and that place has a real storied past. There's nothing between LA east of the 15 freeway until you get to Palm Springs, except Redlands. And there's even actually like a 3-star. What's that? 3-star. I can't remember the people that rate the restaurants. Restaurant. It's great shopping, and it's a beautiful architecture. So, and a nice Costco, and good tacos. But anyway, so yeah, I read into her. That was very, very interesting. So I got a question for you guys. Let me see if I can find this. I got a question for you guys. I was thinking about this the other day, about this wonderful community that's come together and kind of rallying around holding Scientology accountable. And I started sort of marveling at the kind of cultural phenomena. I've always been a massive student of sociology and culture. So I made this little here. Check this out. So help me. I'm doing a little research project, and I want you guys to help me. So I've listed out here the 4 categories that people identify with If you think I'm off on this, let me know. We got first gens, born ins, never ins, and watchers. I would love it if right now everybody watching this would put in the comments which one of these they identify with, or if they identify with another one, uh, if they could just put it in there. And then I've kind of broken the first gens down by decade. You've got the 60s, which is the old guard, people like Janice. Of course, she's also a born in. You can be a born in and you can be an old guard. There's not a lot of those. The old guard burn ins. And then you've got the 70s, the idealists. That's people like me. That's people like Jeff Levin. You heard Jeff talk about that, about how idealistic we were. I know a lot of people like that. And then you have the never ends. And I've been contacted by a lot of them who are survivors of other cults and other abusive relationships. Typo, sorry, I don't have a proofreader. Activists who support the overall X community. And these are people that if you wanted to make fun of them, you'd call them social justice warriors, but they're really good people. And then you have watchers, which I don't know how to categorize them except they're crime show fans. Now, one thing I was off on that I really want your help with is the 2000s. We're in the third decade now of the 2000s. I can't categorize that. It's 2 decades, leaving out the one we're in. There's the 0 to 9 and then 10 to 19. Uh, I don't know what to say. Like, I first got to it and I went, oh, people that are really stupid, because how could you have joined Scientology after the year 2000 if you weren't incredibly gullible? But you know, Apostate Alex, who I just consider a dear friend, I've had a lot of communication with him. I've been on his channel. We've spoken back and forth. He's helped me with things. I've helped him with things. He's anything but gullible or unintelligent, and he joined in the 2000s. So if anybody has any thoughts about the how to categorize the people who got in the early 2000s, people who got in after 2009. Let me back up a minute. The 80s were the fame seekers. These were the celebrity wannabes. I was public at CC, so I saw a lot of these people. They were all like, I'm going to become a Scientologist and become a famous movie star. We saw a lot of that. And then in the 90s, you had the hedonistic fortune seekers like the Grant Cardones. The 90s, we saw a lot of those people get in. And I'm when it comes to the 2000s, I'm stumped. So I'm sort of crowdsourcing my little research project to you guys out there. Okay, there you go. Thanks for humoring me with that. That's just something I've been giving a lot of thought to, and I wanted to present it here on the first episode of Saturday Night Confessional. So I thought with the title of this stream, I should probably come up with like, what's the worst, juiciest thing that I ever did as in my job at Gold, and I can't. It's really weird. I've completely blocked it out. Steve Britton. I thought, for some reason, however, I'm missing something there. Oh, I've never been in a cult or abusive relationship. I don't mind crime shows, but I'm more than a watcher. But I don't meet your definition of never in. Well, what are we going to do with Steve? Oh, you do consider yourself a never in. Okay. So that's a category of, I'll have to come up with a name for that. Or if you do, Steve, let me know. And thank you for that. And we have Brian Doherty was born SP. At Brian Doherty, he was a born SP. So there's a little love for you. You guys are amazing. Okay, question, can I be a PA in your next film? Absolutely. I can promise you 100% because my next film doesn't exist. So sky's the limit on that one, but absolutely. Depending on your qualifications, Denver Steve-O, yeah, sure. Yeah, we have you on board. Just, I don't know. What do you want to do? Craft service? Something like fun so you don't have to drive a truck all day? I think you're a little higher qualified than that. Maybe we'll give you like maybe you could be a location scout or something. That's a lot of fun. Okay, question. What was the most shocking thing you learned once you were out? That has a couple of answers. One of the answers, hold on, that's a drinking game answer. Every time I hear the word shocking in a question, I'm going to have to take a drink. That's a mocktail, folks, so don't ask. I'm not a big drinker. So anyway, we do, at least I did, a lot of what's called compartmentalization. You see one thing, and you put it in a box. I turned a corner, and I saw my good friend David Miscavige abusing people like unbelievably. 3 executives, a woman and 2 men, physically and emotionally, verbally terrorizing these people. That goes in a box. All the other stuff about Scientology and him goes in another box. And then you keep these boxes apart by a thing called cognitive dissonance. That's what kind of helps you separate the boxes, because those things don't mix together. And one of the most shocking things I learned was how horribly that compartmentalization had affected me in ways that I never knew. Now, I realize you were not looking for an answer of what I learned about myself. You were looking for an answer of what I looked at into the world and learned. Um, and I got to tell you, I think one of the most shocking things I learned was about my backdrop, that it was painted by Vibke Hansen, because I only found that out a few months ago, who she was, that she'd been forced to sign a billion-year contract, and she'd been labor trafficked to gold, sent straight into the RPF, then labor trafficked to gold as a set painter. She had been an artist before she was a Scientologist. She's a very good artist. I was mind blown. That really blew my mind. All of the other stuff I was kind of still in when I found it out. I mean, I was sort of 1 foot out when I watched, when I binged Leah Remini's show. And what was so shocking was that I knew all of those stories, or I knew enough about them that I easily could have known about them. So again, it was kind of something about me. I was so shocked that I would so compartmentalize that. There was a few that I was unaware of, but only a few. I mean, I knew a lot of those people. You know, I knew Val. We worked together. She was one of my quote unquote juniors, as was Mark Headley, but that's another story. It was weird. The way that it works in my position of gold, I was at the top of a division. There was only one person above me. So I had the whole division below me. So I could say, yeah, I was Mark Headley's boss, but it's not really accurate, because their real boss was a Sea Org member who was quote unquote above me. And I mean, really in quotes, because there was very few people I considered above me. David Miscavige, because I didn't want to get in trouble with him. And, people like Mike Rinder, because you respect them. So, but most of the people, just because they're above you on the org board, it doesn't mean shit. The organizing board, I think some of you know what that is, but Scientology has a very hierarchical system for organizing every task and every activity within the organization. And the hierarchy, what it does is it creates heavier and heavier and heavier layers of pressure that push down on people and kind of crush their souls. So what flows up the org board is compliance. What flows down is pressure. And that's pretty much how it works. Oh, let me hide that. So I don't know that I'm trying to think. One of the most shocking things I learned was a good thing. It was about a young man who left when he was maybe 20, and today he's probably 50, and he was drummed out of the Sea Org. They destroyed his life because of something he wanted to do in his job. I have to be careful here because he's never told the story and it's not my place to tell it. But he was literally kicked out because of something he proposed doing at Gold in my area. And then he went back to his home country and actually ended up pulling off what he tried to pull off at Gold and became wealthy and successful as a result of it. And when I found that out, I was really shocked. He called me up. We spoke on the phone, and because I used to tell this guy regularly how talented I thought he was, and that was the thing he hung on to when he left. That it gave him confidence and courage, and it was never my intention to do that. I'm going to start crying now when I'm thinking about it. But him calling me up and telling me about his success and about how I'd give him the courage and the confidence to leave when he was just a kid and make a success out of himself. So, and that was really shocking. Yeah. So let me see what else we got going on here. So sometimes good things shock you. Here we go. Another question. You weren't a Sea Org member, but worked at Gold. Would you have classified as a contractor or staff? Those staff members didn't get paid that well. Oh, no, I was definitely a contractor. The only thing I really signed with them was like, I have an S1 corporation, and that corporation was then contracted to work for Gold and provided my services to Gold. So that's how it worked, business-wise. All of that's pretty worthless now, right along with my career for having spent so much time there. But I was definitely considered for legal and tax and, compensation purposes. I was a contractor. I was a corporation that they hired. But in any other way, every other way, I was a Scientologist. So I was treated as a staff member and to some degree. And then as time went by, there was a number of us pros, a number of whom I was responsible for bringing up there. As time went by, Miscavige, he started very overtly and intentionally and explicitly treating us more and more like staff, like Sea Org members, for most of the time I worked there, you staff members will appreciate this. I didn't have to do any of the admin crap. I mean, I didn't do a daily battle plan. I didn't keep statistics. I had an assistant who did that all for me, right? Like whatever I was supposed to get done that day, she'd write it down and show it to my quote unquote boss. I never even see it. It was, a breeze. And then a few years before I left, I had to do all of that myself. I even had to do my own laundry. I mean, I had a laundromat in my room my house up there that they gave you, but it was crazy. And towards the end, I started having to take on a lot of the burdens that staff members have, and they're given useless, meaningless work that is done to do nothing other than staticize their activities. It's ridiculous. It's just like, it's crazy. And they get in trouble if they don't do it. So I was really becoming disgruntled and disaffected and disenchanted and every other dis you could possibly imagine. To say they didn't get paid that well, they didn't get paid. I mean, they got money for shampoo and deodorant and cigarettes, and that was it. Yeah, this is really a good, thank you for saying that you consider compartmentalization to be a coping mechanism. Oh, no, it absolutely is. It's nothing else. I hope nobody thought I was mentioning it as a mental health ability that everybody should have. No, it's the way we get by. It's the way we settle our emotions. Oh, there you go. I just thought of another really shocking thing that I learned. That everything I ever learned in Scientology about therapists was a complete lie. Not psychiatrists, but we don't have to go there. I mean, I didn't like psychiatry before I got into Scientology. I designed the Industry of Death Museum. So I obviously didn't like psychiatry while I was in. And I still don't like it because I think they engage in some kind of some brutality. What kind of puppy do I have? Oh, I wish I had a picture of him. I didn't load one. I don't know where he is. I think he's sleeping. I'm going to leave him alone. He's a 2-year-old lemon beagle whose mother was a pocket beagle and his father was a tricolor beagle. I don't. Yeah, a lemon beagle means they don't have black. You know, beagles are traditionally 3 colors: white, brown, and black. So my little puppy, who's named Weston after the photographer Edward Weston, kind of a bougie name. Uh, but he's a little, like he only weighs 23 pounds. He's a small, what's called a lemon beagle, only brown and white. And he's a good guy. I got him at the request of a sociopathic narcissist I was dating for a few months who wanted to get a puppy, and then we broke up right after I got the puppy. So that's another very interesting conversation. Is generally speaking, if you're not really on a pathway to healing yourself, the first relation, and you're not in a relationship, you're not fortunate enough to like have left Scientology with a partner, you're probably in that vulnerable state. You're going to meet somebody who is going to be just like the cult, except for one person. And that actually happened to me. It was crazy, but I worked it out. Here's an interesting one. So yeah, I'll try to find a picture of my puppy. This says right here, were you a fan of the auditing process? Absolutely not. That's one of, I think there was a time when I was, I mean, I have some theories about how auditing can help to settle a person's emotions, but it does it in a very fake way that it doesn't increase your self-awareness. It creates a false identity that you believe in, and you're channeling your identity into this false identity. It settles your emotions, but you're losing your identity. So it's what makes it so difficult for people to leave Scientology. And the further you go up the bridge, the worse it is. Here, I think I can explain this. So once you get into the OT levels and you're dealing with body thetans, and when you get it in context, it's not that hard to believe that when you actually go through all the steps you need to get it in context. But so you now believe that you're involved with these other disembodied beings, and that they have thoughts and they have emotions and they have memories, and they pass right through you, and you can't tell the difference between you and them. So when you're upset, it could be them or it could be you. So a perfect example, I'm talking to this person who left Scientology, and they were very highly trained auditor, CS, OTA. And this person told me that they still believed in body thetans, even though they left Scientology and they hated the church and all that. But they still believed in it because when they get upset and they're having a bad day, they know it's just a BT and not them. And so then, do you see how this can help a person to then disassociate from the bad feeling and go, oh, that's not me. And then they feel better. So I was working with a therapist, and we were talking about this idea. I forget the kind of therapy, but there's this kind of type of therapy where you're looking at the chain of events that leads you to be triggered. It's not that different from putting it on a BT. So you find the chain of an event that led you to be triggered, and guess what? You've increased your self-awareness. But if you take your triggering and you put it on a BT, you've lessened your self-awareness. So by the time you arrive at the top of the bridge, your core identity has been completely taken over. Anyway, that's my little, thank you for attending my TED Talk on that's what that's all about. Um, Hopefully you found that interesting. And thank you for that question. Okay, so here, this says you weren't, oh, I already did that one. I'm not going to do that again. Okay. Here's a good one. Why is there so much secrecy about projects around Hollywood? I've always wondered about that. Are you talking about just like motion pictures in general? I think that's what you mean. Well, it has to do with marketing. It's really important to keep things secret. I mean, I remember I had a girlfriend who worked. She did soundtracks. She did like Urban Cowboy and blah blah blah. Somebody I met in Scientology. It left years ago, but I remember I was with her when ET came out. It was that long ago, and I remember she brought a script home while they were making ET because they were thinking about having her do the soundtrack album. And this script, I think is what you're talking about, Steve. Every page of it was watermarked with a number that was recorded against her name. So if that script got out, um, it would it'd be traced back to her. They're very tight on security because they don't want people scooping them. I mean, somebody could find out about, ET and they could, real quick make a cheap version of it. It's just, or, maybe they have a competing movie coming out and it gives them some angle with which they can write bad press about it. But I've never seen, I mean, I was never in the military, but one day when we were opening SMP during the period, the run up to the opening, we all took like a, excuse me, we took a tour of the mixing stage of Paramount, and I'd been in there. I had friends that work at Paramount, blah blah blah. But they have a Technicolor runs the mixing studio at Paramount Studios. So you drive into Paramount, you go down Michael Way Boulevard because he's made so much money for them. So we went in there, and okay, so get this, they have these different levels of security at like a mixing studio. So the mixing studio at Paramount, the Technicolor sound facility, that's where they mix all of the Marvel Universe films and a bunch of big Disney films. And when you walk in there, you walk past a counter that scans you for electronic devices. Any electronic device you have to give it to them. You can't walk in there with a USB stick, a telephone, nothing. And they have cameras that shoot a frame of film every 2 seconds, right? They have a system on the roof of that building that if that building catches on fire, it will put any fire out in 2 seconds because what's in there is so valuable. And I was talking with them about the security of the facility, and the guy was bragging and he said, well, most of the sound facilities in Hollywood only have Disney level security. We have Marvel level security. So it's a pretty serious thing, Steve, the security, because I mean, a lot of the stuff there was just because of piracy. So, but what's really crazy is the level of secrecy that the church has on its projects ahead of time. But it creates, in order for it to project this sense of importance to its members and staff, it has to make everything really secret, make it really important. It's also the same reason that the church pumps up its enemies, the reasons that the church says it has such huge enemies. Because let's face it, insignificant groups and people don't have enemies, only important groups and people. So one of the ways that it creates importance is to say that it must keep all of its stuff very secure, and it must be very secretive and have very high security. I'm not talking about the OT stuff. That had to be kept secure because it only had value if a few people knew about it. So let me see, what else do we got here? Somebody paid me a very nice compliment. I want to just acknowledge her. Oh, something. No, that's not it. But she said something about um, that I was doing fine being myself, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that because I didn't know who I was until I left Scientology, and I'm still trying to figure it out. Yeah, I'm reading this Roxy's comment. I hated stats. I just used to flip from normal to emergency to normal again just by saving. Yeah, exactly. They are, everybody messes with their stats. Uh, yeah, anyway, it's a good comment. I'm way behind on all these. Yeah. Okay. So listen. Yeah. I want to just say that I want to just make a further comment on my comment against psychiatry. I have some personal experiences myself and with friends. Psychiatry is a spectrum. There are some very good psychiatrists that I've read about and heard about from people who practice psychotherapy, and they do a really good job. And I also personally have friends whose lives have been saved by psychiatric medication. So I'm not an anti-psychiatry warrior. I have a whole different impression of them than I do of therapists. A therapist I consider more like psychiatrists. I consider to be witch doctors, and therapists are like healers. So anyway, yep, puppy better than some people. Absolutely. I'm scrolling. I'm scrolling. I can't do this thing where you star them and do them later. It just doesn't. Okay, there's another one from Steve. Mitch, the question is mainly around who was brought on board to be involved in a project or who is even being talked to about it. I'm not sure. I missed something here earlier on your question. Let me see if I can understand that. The question is mainly around who has been brought on board to be involved in a project or who is even being talked to about it. In terms of talent, if by talent, if you mean actors, because we usually refer to actors as talent, actors just came in on a sort of standard casting, remote casting, because casting, so much of it was done remotely today. But uh, when they bring people on a project, they're usually pretty guarded about what they tell them. The like projects at Gold, they give them a number, Gold project number 36. They don't even give it a title because they don't want people. They want people to know as little as possible. Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's exactly right. That's just how it is. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. There are a lot of good drugs out there. There's no doubt about it. Let me see if we got any. Okay. Here's a question. Let's put it up here and read it. What were your introductions with Dave and Lou like in your last years in Scientology? Were they abusive towards you? Well, Dave was rarely abusive towards me because, uh, ah, you know, I was like important. Uh, I hate getting into this because it makes it sound like I'm trying to be self-important, but I was like a useful idiot. I was really handy to be kept around, like the St. Pete Times, back when they were the St. Pete Times, the Tampa Bay Times, back before they did the famous Truth Rundown article, the three-part series that Mike and Marty were involved in. Some years before that, they'd done a piece called "The Man Behind Scientology," a piece on David Miscavige, and the two writers, God, their names, Childs and Tobin, the two writers who did the Truth Rundown. They came out to Gold. I spent an hour or two being interviewed by those guys, telling them what a great guy David Miscavige was. So I like always had that value. So like, let's just keep Mitch silent in a bubble and happy, and then we can just pull him out, drop him in front of people, ABC 2020 or whatever, and he goes, oh, they pull the string. I was kind of that way. So he was never abusive to me. Lou, on the other hand, they're narcissists. So they swing back and forth, black and white thinking. Everything in the world is good, really good, like people, or really bad. Lou was the only person that ever screamed at me in the entire time I was in Scientology. And the entire time I worked for Gold, she was the only exec who ever screamed at me. I mean, it was on the phone, but it was pretty, and she sounded just like Miscavige. Dave, not so much. I mean, he got a little pissed at me toward the end because I was in like ethics trouble, but we were still friends and blah blah blah. Uh, and he was real quick to threaten people. Like he was real quick to just say, like I'm gonna haul you in front of the whole crew and tell everybody what you did. He liked to really play that sort of, we're gonna pillory you in the town square kind of thing. But I wasn't. It was the people around me that were abused. I mean, she's 2017. I flew on a G7 to England with 5-star catered meals with the two of them. We were getting along great. And then things kind of went downhill a little bit, but nothing like the other people. I mean, the kind of abuse, it's really hard to, like, I hate talking. It's difficult for me to talk about being abused in Scientology because I wasn't put in the hole. I wasn't beaten. I wasn't put in beans and rice. I mean, there were times when I had my pay cut in half, but it's like, it was still at half. It was more than most people make. So, but there's a kind of a, a, a- like it's really difficult. I wrote about it in a book. It's hard to explain. If I could think of a better way of telling it to you guys, I'm assuming my mic's not too loud, or you would have told me, right? I'm looking down at my levels and it seemed a little hot. But anyway, I thought the last time I was really interacting with them was right before SMP, Scientology Media Productions, was opened. I think that was in May of 2016, 17. I don't remember. Then I went back up to gold. And there was a lot of stress. They were freaking out because of they were so late getting the studio open. And I remember one day, Miss Gabbage just really flying off the handle about the donors. I've got donors that are expecting me to get this place open, which really tells you like what the motivation is. Like it was about making the donors happy because he'd obviously sold so many people this bill of goods about having this television network that he was being concerned about making good on his promise. Hey, there you are. You're very welcome. You ask, and you shall be given. Well, here's an interesting question. We could do the next hour on this. How do you rate the production of the anonymous message Scientology video? Okay, so how do I rate the production? It was perfect for its medium. And that's the short answer. It was perfect for its medium. And therefore, in my definition, it was a perfect piece of art because one of the definitions of what makes art a perfect piece of art is it's perfect for its medium. Like, for instance, if you try to write a book, but what you really mean to do is paint a painting, it's not going to be a good book because you haven't really nailed the medium. But the person, and I think it was just one person that made that video because it, my belief, which is theoretical, but my belief is the whole anonymous thing was kicked off by 4 people who stood back and watched it happen and were like, whoa, what did we do? Because they never intended it to blow up like that. And if you want to know more about that, I talked to Mark and Janice. I did a whole long interview with them because I was right on the battle line on the Scientology end when the anonymous thing happened. But again, that video was perfect. I mean, some guy did it in his basement. He did a small little video with an electronic processed voice. Um, Somebody very clever had written it. The language was perfect, very threatening. The all the film, the video, the shots they were all stock shots. The pacing was perfect. The link was perfect. I would rate it very high in that medium. It's not like a Stanley Kubrick film or a Martin Scorsese film or a Steven Spielberg film. But in its genre, it's like a perfect little video. That's how I would rate it. Scared the fuck out of the church, let me tell you, man. Which I think makes it even more perfect that you could have you can have that much impact putting out that little effort. And thank you very much for that compliment. I really appreciate it. Okay, and here's another, there's no question. So I'm just going to put up all the compliments. Like Mark Twain said, he had a real problem receiving compliments because they were never enough. I kind of feel the same way. Um, it's been a real, yeah. I got to tell you, more advice from Steve. Thank you. Don't get too stressed out about behind in the comments. You simply won't be able to keep up. Is there a far more? Yeah, there's 91 people in here. I mean, these ain't, Aaron Smith 11 numbers, but it's something. Yeah, I understand this. The comment. Thank you, Donna, for your comment. I understand therapists don't have to be doctors. Fortunately, they're not. Psychiatrists, yeah, they're medical doctors. I mean, don't get me started. Yeah, don't get me started. I remember reading this study, like when I was doing all of the anti-psychiatry research. This was the key book. Oh, whoops, that's not going to get in focus. Anyway, if anybody's interested about the history of mostly schizophrenia, but of mental health, this is an amazing book. And it's written by a noted science writer. And in my research, it's not in that book, but in my research when I was working on the museum, which there are a few things that are right in that museum, it's mostly bullshit. I wish I could do tours and take people through it, but of course they wouldn't let me and show them, oh, this is bullshit, this is bullshit. But, in the Soviet Union, it was a mental disease to be against communism, and you would be locked up and pumped full of Haldol. So, and those were psychiatrists. You can call them, Soviet psychiatrists, which is true. They're not like necessarily American psychiatrists, just like the Nazi psychiatrists were Nazis. They weren't like American psychiatrists. But, I remember reading a study where 80% of the kids in the study who had been prescribed Adderall for ADHD, they had sleep problems. And when they handled their sleep problems, they got off of the drugs, but none of the psychiatrists had checked them for sleep disorders. That's kind of the problem I have with psychiatry. We're going to move on. I have a therapist now. I talk to her once a week online. She's absolutely amazing person, except she won't subscribe to my channel for professional reasons. But, she watches my videos. So. And by the way, I have to say, my therapist, Osa, if you're watching, hello, she thinks it's great that I'm speaking out. She really enjoys it. Question, was there a concerted, I think you mean, effort to transition from using staff to outside talent? Again, I'm assuming you mean actors. And yes, there absolutely was a concerted effort. It was like an order. It was like an order from COB, from David Miscavige himself, that we needed to stop using staff. When I first went up there, it was very frustrating because all of the talent were staff, even the leads in the films. And I got them running the Hubbard acting school. I got them to restart it because at least it got the staff into doing some acting drills and things, which they weren't horrible. It's just, it's not the way to become an actor, but they were kind of childish drills that would kind of loosen up your ability to portray a character, but they were not serious acting stuff. But so what happened was, Gold, they do SAG work and non-SAG work, like the film that Jason Begay was in, which I'm surprised none of you asked me about that, because he plays a character in a technical training film that drugs and rapes his girlfriend. Okay. And, in the Danny Masterson trial, when the story broke, it was the first thing I thought of. None of us, we were like, okay, whatever, but anyway, they basically teach auditors in Scientology that the technology they have is so superior that they could take a person who drugs women and rapes them, and they can make them okay with an auditing session. And as we all know, it's not what they do. They then protect those people, and then they traumatize the victims. And it's actually shown in a technical training film in a very insidious, subtle way. So, like when we did the thing with Jason, sure, he's a Scientologist, but he's also a SAG actor, so he had to be paid on a SAG contract. And there's also a lot of extras in the film. It's very expensive to hire extras that are, SAG after kind of extras. So Gold was able to work a deal with SAG so that they could use their staff as extras along with SAG actors. And then, of course, the non-union stuff they do, they don't have to worry about that. So I know the film I did with Jason, where he played that character, I had to redo that film, and it was very difficult to get good actors. So I told Gold, you're gonna go SAG, and you're gonna pay way over scale. I think we ended up paying $2,500 a day, which was a discount for the two leads we got, because they were both really good actors. Because it is a fact, if you only pay scale, if you're producing film and you're only going to pay scale, you might get lucky and get somebody on their way up. But for the most part, you're not going to get great talent. You have to start paying more money. And then the more credits they get, the more expensive they are. So these guys weren't names, but so yeah, the order was, and then it was not just outside talent, but it was no more Scientologists. I mean, when I redid the Professional TRs film, which was a film that was never going to be redone because Hubbard originally did it. I talked about it in the Gold reaction video that I did, if you're interested in hearing more about it. But that's an extremely important film, and there's 3 main characters in that film that are played by OTH Scientologists, and I would not be surprised if at least one of them left. So then it became no more Scientology, no Scientology, professional actors, no Scientology. So, and that was not just a concerted effort, that was an order. Yes, I did charge less for working for Scientology than I would have been making the real world. There was a period of time, a number of years, where I was able to negotiate with them to pay me Directors Guild minimum because I'm a member of the Directors Guild, but I wasn't doing my work through the Guild. I kind of got a pass on that because I was doing it for my religion. But yeah, I definitely charge them less. I mean, the idea was they were going to give me more work than I might have gotten on the outside, but it was more work than I wanted. But yeah, I did charge them less. Yep, follow me on Instagram. And also, here, before I forgot, you can support my journey to hold Scientology accountable, buymeacoffee.com. It's in the show notes. Anyway. Yeah, if Dave threatened to tell everyone, I just want to read your comment, Steve, because I think it's a really good comment. If he threatened to tell everybody about me, I would just tell everyone myself first. Then he can do whatever he wants, and he can't cause more damage. Well, in the bubble, that's not true, because you can say it, but Dave saying it has 100 more. And plus, if you did say it, he'd figure out a way to say it in a way that reflects how you're having said it makes it even worse. It's crazy. But I think once you get out, I mean, there's things that the church knows about me that I don't want made public that are in my folders. And so I got some advice. Just put it all in your author's note or put it at the beginning of your book. And I really thought about doing that. And I'm like, no, every one of us deserves to have a privacy. I mean, there's such a lack of privacy today. And I'm not going to pierce my privacy because I think they're going to spill the beans. I'm going to let them be bad people, and I'm going to let them spill it, because there's a chance that they'll start putting up a hate site and taking stuff out of my folders. and it doesn't make them look good. And so let them be the ones, let them be the security wreckers. That's my feeling about it. I don't think, it's not like, yeah, Bill Clinton should have gotten out ahead of when the thing happened with what's her name. So yeah, he should have just gone out and said, yeah, I did this and I'm really sorry, whatever. And people wouldn't have cared, but instead he lied about it. So that's the thing you don't want to do. You don't want to lie about it. If they come after me, I'll go, yeah, I did that. And you're a piece of shit for putting it out there. You got that out of my folders. Look at my folder. It says priest penitent confidentiality, and you violated that. You're a piece of shit. And I'm not ashamed of anything I did. I just didn't want it known about. So I think that's kind of my attitude about it. Uh, yeah, okay. Thank you, Vicky, for this comment. Um, Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses are cults. I was raised, yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I think they're just cults, but yeah, isn't that interesting that it's the other group that's the cult? It's never your group. I mean, that's exactly how we felt. Okay. You guys are funny. Okay. How was it when Valerie Henny blew? Did you get caught up in the flap? Are you looking forward to her case getting more coverage? Yeah, I knew Hillary really well, and I've spoken with her since she left. She doesn't live in LA anymore, but I visited with her not long after. I just decided that there was no reason not to be talking to my old friends. I remember the day that she and a woman named Amber O'Sullivan, who is Claire Headley's cousin. I don't think they were ever close. Two of them were busted out of RTC at the same time. They came into Cine, which is a favorite dumping ground of RTC. They love putting their broken people in Cine. They usually put them in sets like painting or set building or whatever. And then, I used to joke that like, Miscavige would send me all of his broken people, and because they somehow got fixed working in Cine, which to some degree is true because it's fun work. I mean, it's like you're building sets and you're on a film crew, and yeah, you're getting $50 a week and you're not sleeping. But compared to other jobs up there, any of the staff who were up there and worked with me and came on the set and whatever, they'll tell you it really beat the hell out of a lot of other jobs. Hopefully, when Mark Headley gets back in town, we've been talking about doing because we worked on a lot of stuff together. But anyway, to get back to your question about Valerie, no, I wasn't involved in the flap at all. It wasn't my flap. I mean, it was just like whatever. She was my junior in the sense that she had to answer to me specifically on casting. So in terms of the activity of filmmaking, she was my junior. In terms of organizationally as a staff member, none of those people were my juniors. Only in terms of what we were doing were they supposed to follow my orders about a film, not about any like other stuff. So I don't know. By the time Valerie left, I was kind of like, "Go, girl!" I mean, it's like because I knew how tough it was for these guys, and just the fact that she was overcame the. I don't care if you're not claustrophobic. Spending 2 hours in the locked trunk of a car is pretty intense. You gotta really want to get out of there to do that. So I wasn't caught up in the flap. It was just they minimize those things. Like they don't talk about it. They just keep it really internal. Like when Ron Miscavige left, I never heard about that. Let's say my cameraman at Gold, let's say he hopped the fence, as we used to say, or took a walk, as we used to call it, euphemisms, right? Somebody would come to me and they'd say, so and so left, and we have a replacement, and here's how we're going to handle it, and blah blah blah. But it wasn't my fault at all. And I was not unhappy that she left. Wow, Steve, you're very opinionated about the world of actors. Some actors are real people, some are arrogant swine. Some think they are gods, some are afraid of the real world. Yeah, those are really true words, even more so the celebrities that I knew in Scientology. I mean, I could tell you which ones were pieces of shit and which ones were really nice people. I'm not going to mention names as who was a total piece of shit, Jenna Elfman, but there were, some really nasty characters. Jenna Elfman. Okay, so here we're going to move on here. Yeah, and if any of you watching this haven't subscribed to my channel, I'm going to hunt you down. I have powers. I have OT powers. I'm coming after you. Okay, here you go. How could I not show this? Oh, Denver Stevio. Me, do me, whatever that is. But thank you, Steve. Alan Hollander. Boy, that's a flash from the past. Alan Hollander and his wife, for those of you who don't know, Karen, they were a couple. He was a very wealthy investment guy, and I guess they joined the Sea Org. Somehow they were the head of Celebrity Center. They ran it like she was the executive director and he was whatever. And then she decided to go up to him. They got divorced. I think he just left Scientology. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know what happened to. I don't know what happened to his daughters. The one of them I knew at Gold, Lauren. I did some videos with her. And I've seen Karen, just poor Karen Hollander. I mean, such a bright, idealistic person. And, she just ended up with crappy jobs. She ended up in the hole. It's just. So who knows what's happened to Alan Hollander. Last I heard years ago, he moved back to Northern California where they were from, and he carried on as an investment guy. Holy moly, I'm trying Adderall for my sleep problems. No. This was children, Steve. This was just a bunch of kids. This is a whole different thing. This was about kids that were, I have sleep problems and I'm not an Adderall, so maybe I should go see my doctor and get a sample pack, grind that shit up and snort it. Okay, here, what is this? No, I did not. I wasn't around. I didn't know Flo at all. The whole thing seems really fishy to me. I do know that when I was at Scientology Media Productions, I thought I got rid of that thing. But anyway, yeah, buy me a coffee, or if you're anywhere near Studio City, hit me up and I'll buy you a real coffee because I'm a pretty friendly guy. So no, I wasn't around, but when I was in Scientology Media Productions, for some reason, David Miscavige took it on itself to call all of the pros that were working there, and there were a lot of pros working at S&P, writers, magazine people, designers, marketers. He hired, there was maybe 15 well-paid professionals working there when I was there. And he called them, and then all the divisional heads, all the important people, he called them all in to a meeting, and he had a guy named Lynn Varney, who's not a lawyer, but he's a legal liaison. He had him go through these binders, going through everything that David Miscavige had ever been accused of: killing L. Ron Hubbard, killing Shelley's mom, stealing money from the church. And for some reason, he took us through every one of the accusations for like 2 days, 6 hours a day, explaining how they weren't true. And it was just so bizarre because nobody was thinking about this stuff. but for some reason he called everybody in and had this big meeting because I think he was concerned that a lot of these pros who were not Scientologists, that they were maybe doing research about him and figuring stuff out. And that's kind of when I really first heard about Shelley's mom and the way that she unfortunately became deceased. But I wasn't around it, or it wasn't around me. What was the last thing you recall saying to Miscavige to his bangs? I don't know. That's an interesting question. There's no way I could. There's no way I could even begin to remember what was I mean, I know the last thing I said to him in writing. I know. Excuse me here. I'm not leaning over in my chair because I'm passing gas. Believe it or not. Maybe I'll read this someday. Here, look. Letter to me from. Well, guys are gonna freeze that and read it. That's fine. You can. It's not all that big a deal. It's just the last letter I got from him in 2018. Which when I first, anyway, it took me a little while to decode it and to realize that his professing friendship, his extending his friendship to me was for me to really recognize it for the manipulative tactic it was. And once it hit me, I was like, I bolted up straight in bed and I went, oh my God, I just realized another way I got used. I wish it would have been, fuck you, Dave, but it wasn't. It's an interesting comment question. If it wasn't for the internet, would Scientology have grown since the 90s instead of declined? Possibly. I mean, the real reason it declined is because Miscavige, it's kind of, it wouldn't have been him, it would have been somebody else. There's kind of this trajectory of these groups, this arc that they take, and they all end up being violent and destructive, damaging people, and then flaming out. I almost went to a rehab in the 70s called Synanon, and that's a really good example. Synanon it started out, they had this beautiful 4-story building right on the beach in Santa Monica. It was just heroin addicts went there, and they helped a lot of people get off the heroin. Then it became this darling of this sort of culture world in LA, and people like what's his name, Mr. Spock on Star Trek, people like that, big stars, they'd go out there and they'd give acting lessons. Over time, they expanded tremendously, and then over time, they became more and more evil until they became an armed cult. And an attorney who spoke out against them, they put a rattlesnake in the guy's mail slot. The guy was bitten. He survived. People went to prison. Eventually, they ceased to exist, but it started out like their PR was better than Scientology's ever was. And if you're interested in Synanon, there's Robert Downey Jr. and his wife. They have a company that produces podcasts, and they did a podcast about Synanon, which I'm sure you can find. There's a bunch of stuff about Synanon, but I've always considered Synanon to be like a perfect example of this arc that these groups go through, where they start out really helpful and really benign, and then they end up becoming violent and really hurting people. So I think it would have happened anyway. I just think that the internet was an accelerant, because the thing that these cults and these secret organizations can't stand is information. Hey, here you are. Come on. People want to meet you. By the way, beagles do not like to be picked up. But, this is Weston. I know. He's really cute. He's like, you're on. There you go. So, there you go. So yeah, I my dog is like, what are you doing, man? Why are you picking me up? They don't like to be picked up. Okay, you guys are gonna have to hold on a second. I gotta let him out. Here, come with me. Come on with me. Come on. Yeah, sorry about that. He just needed to go out. I don't have anybody here. My kid's not here to help me. So, uh, somebody said something about if they would have to redo. Where was it? It was a question about if they uh, about if they had to do redo films because staff left, and the answer was absolutely yes, they did. Or often with the staff because they had smaller parts. Like I remember a film, the doll film, what is called referred to as the doll film. That's the film that 15-year-old Danny Masterson starred in, and boy, he was a lot of fun to work with. Uh, Mark Headley played a sewer ethics officer in that film, and so they had to digitally swap out his face, which was really funny. Okay, here we go. Did you ever ask Leah Remini to star in a training film early on? Was you? No, I didn't really know Leah Remini that well. I met her a few times. The first time we shot the orientation film, I interviewed her and John and Kirsty and Ann Archer. That original version of that film had celebrity interviews at the end, which I mean, I used to try and tell Miscavige, like, you can't end a film like orientation. You can't say how great Scientology is and then have a bunch of celebs say it as though, well, we don't know that if you're going to believe us, so maybe you'll believe them. It was really stupid, and I hated doing it, but the check cashed, so I did it. But Leah was too much of a celeb. Like, you weren't going to be in a tech film if you were a big celeb, because the thinking was that it would detract from the film. I mean, when Jason was in a film called The Session, where the character he played drugged and raped his partner's girlfriend, Jason he wasn't really doing that much. I mean, he'd done like G.I. Jane and a few things, and but we were close friends, and he was one of the, how do you say it, like collateral damage. Like, he left. Um, anyway, I'm sorry I lost my friendship with a few people. Jason was one of them, but Jason was not enough of a celebrity that it disqualified him from being in the film. Where Leah at that point was really well known enough that it would have been detracting. Like, you don't want students looking at a film going, "Oh, that's Leah Remini." So, other people that were in films, I mean, Jenna Elfman, I did a couple things with her. Actually, the first time she was ever on camera was a thing I did when she was 19 years old, before she even decided to be an actress. But yeah, so no, the answer is no. We never asked. The only one exception to what I just said was I cast Isaac Hayes in a film. All of his scenes were just with him. He was like a presenter. The script was called for like an old guy. I talked about this on some other channel. He taught it was like a guy in a robe with white hair, like an old wise philosopher. And I thought Isaac would be perfect, so I proposed to him, and that was approved. And we asked him to do it, and it was like so. But he would be the one exception, partially because of who he was and the part that it was, because he was called the Black Moses, and he was a royalty. He was descendant from royalty from his home country of Ghana, or of the country his lineage, and he had gone back there, and he had been, whatever they call it, crowned, anointed, whatever, a king. And so it was just kind of really fit the thing. So he was the only big person that I ever had in one of the films. But it would have been fun to work with Leah. She's a trip. I hope that someday I can hook back up with her, because when I interviewed her in the orientation film, Leah, at least back then, she's a real live wire, and she had a lot of fun kind of making me feel uncomfortable in front of my crew. I almost had them all sent to the RPF for laughing at her jokes, which were at my expense. But I never took that to be her thing. I was just, but she's kind of like, oh, so you're the director, and she's like giving me a lot of shit. But I hope I get to meet her again now that I'm also have left, because I have a tremendous respect for her. You know, I'm going to bring this thing back. I'm going to bring this thing back again because I want to make a point, and I really hope you guys help me figure out these decades in the 2000s. Like, send me emails, send me messages, whatever. I just have to say that it's the born-ins who have really led the way to holding Scientology accountable for its crimes. People like Leah, people like Aaron, people like, others. I mean, there are definitely some first gens who did some serious damage, like Paul Haggis and others. But it's really, I mean, Leah has done more for this movement, and I hope I get a chance to thank her personally someday. Okay, this is an interesting question. I'm trying to find. No, you won't find We Are the Auditors. Okay, so here's what happened. I went up to Gold. I did a couple of films. It was a huge success. I don't know if I ever talked about it. I definitely wrote about it in my book, about the fact that Hubbard had written this executive directive that said that any film should only take 2.5 weeks to produce. Start to like, once you started shooting, you'd shoot for 2 weeks, and every day, 2.5 weeks, you'd get 16 shots a day. It was the most insane metric in the world. It's not how films are made. Films are made, you measure how many script pages you shot, not how many shots you shot. I tried to prove that to them one day. I took one page and I think I did like 50 shots. And I'm like, they're like, awesome, we made triple our quota. I'm like, yeah, but we made so little progress through the script. I'm sorry, this is not film school. So then I did it in 2.5 weeks, and it blew everybody's mind. I didn't even know about this thing. I finished this first film in under 2.5 weeks, and I felt like, I hope this doesn't sound racist, but I felt like, the white explorer who crash landed and some primitive island, and the indigenous people were like, worshiping like a god, and you're like, what the hell's going on here? It was really strange. And so then they were like, what else can this guy do? So there was an event coming up, and the Gold musicians would write these really corny songs. Yes, I spoke with Jeff Levin about this. It's like the Scientology version of Christian rock, right? Except not as well produced as most Christian rock, which is pretty well produced. So they wrote this song, We're the Auditors, right? This really, snappy pop song. And they said, would you interpret this into a music video? And we're going to show it at the event. So I'm like, yeah, sure, I can do that. I hired a bunch of dancers, some fun locations. We shot the thing in 35 millimeter. It was a big production. I shot some music videos before I ever went up there. So it was like, yeah, sure, we can do this. Anyway, I'd spent one entire day shooting dancers, doing it like interpretive dance in these very abstract, it was very like 80s-ish, 90s-ish MTV kind of thing. And I had probably an hour of this dancing for, a 4-minute song, more than I needed. And so as soon as we got back and the film got developed and they got the prints of the film and transferred the video, they sent it all up to RTC, the COB's office. And the note that I got back was, do you have more of this? And it was like, oh, I don't need any more. But all of a sudden I was like, why don't you have more of this? They were so getting off watching it because it was such a new thing for them. So I don't know where you would find, I can tell you that I did these shots in We Are the Auditors. I went and rented the courthouse in Riverside, which is beautiful. I wanted the LA City Hall, but it was too much money for that time. I've shot there a lot, but there's this beautiful courthouse nobody knows about in Riverside with these beautiful white Roman arched long hallways. And, I went in there and smoked the place up and put some really strong xenon lights, making beams down the hallways. And then I had these auditors with their briefcases walking in slow motion and backlit. They are still doing that at every event they do videos that just so I went up there and I one of the things I did, I'm going to toot my horn, is I created a kind of a visual lexicon of images that then became like the style book for all Scientology films and videos. And I've written a little about it because in 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 like in hindsight, it's very much along what was known as Soviet realism or socialist realism, like the art that was done as propaganda to push, to idealize Soviet workers. And all I was really doing was I was swapping out the Soviet communist workers for the auditors and giving it an MTV like makeover. And it's pretty much the design impetus for all that stuff. So I found myself morphing into Leni Riefenstahl. If you don't know who she is, she was Hitler's favorite filmmaker, made the greatest propaganda films of all times. I've written a lot about her. I'm going to be doing a video on her. So I know that was a pretty long answer. If you do find a copy of We Are the Auditors, I mean, I had all this stuff on hard drives. I just never took it with me. I wish I would have, but I'd love to see it again. I'll bet you it kind of holds up. I mean, if you guys watch my thing with Jeff, the interview I did with Jeff Levin, I ran a couple of commercials that he and I did back in the '80s. He did the music for Subway. What happened when? Oh, okay, failure case. Okay, that's like I'm backing up now. Like, what is my problem? Let me just go down here and see what I. Yeah, okay, here's what. Oh, did you ever work with Jeff Pomeranz? He still owes me $20. I mean, really? Who borrows money from a New York member? Okay, Jeff was never in the New York. He was one of those fixtures around Celebrity Center back in the 70s who was, I think, one of those honorary New York members that Jeff Levin talked about. Jeff had plenty of money. He lives in like a like a like a petite French chateau up in the Hollywood Hills that his lovely wife helped to design and run. The guy's got plenty of dough. I would just, I'd send him a request. Email me. I'll send you his email address, and you can send him like a request on Zelle or something for $20. I'm sure he'd get a kick out of it. But yeah, I worked with Jeff a lot. Jeff, for those of you that don't know, he is the voice of the Scientology events. You might have heard him. Welcome to New Year's 25. Anyways, he reminds me of the wrestling guy who does like, "Are you ready to rumble?" That thing. Jeff is a nice guy. He was totally in. Drank a lot of Kool-Aid. Y'all awesome. Mitch, keep singing, please. You don't mean that literally, I hope, because I'm like, oh my God. Two things I can never do. Sing or dance. I really tried to play the 5-string banjo and I got pretty good at it, but it was just like, uh, yeah, okay. So here's a good one. At what point, Jenna from Cali, my dear friend Jenna from Cali, at what point did you realize that you were trapped doing things that competed with your heart? Oh, a lot earlier than I actually realized, but thanks to compartmentalization, um, I think right around I'm trying to think. Well, I saw some amazing red flags within a few weeks of when I went up there, and I've written about them, and I'm astounded at how I was so unresponsive to them. But again, I think it's that compartmentalization thing. But I think it was right around, believe it or not, It was in the early 2000s is when I started feeling, once you start to get that feeling, if you don't act on it, it's like a cancer that kind of eats at you. Like in 2015, I guess it was. No, it was about 2012 when I saw Miscavige actually with my own eyes uh, brutalizing three adult staff members, two men and a woman, and he drew me into the scenario where I came upon it, and he had these three staff members sitting on the cement, which was about 120 degrees in July, the cement, and he's screaming at them. And then I kind of rounded the corner and came on it, and he looked at me while pointing at them and screaming at me, but directing it at them because he was pointing at them, screaming, "That's why you don't have a Dianetics campaign." And he was screaming this over and over again. So it was, I was drawn in like by what's called triangulation. Like he triangulated me into their trauma, and I was really upset by that. And it was like I asked myself so often back then, why didn't I just, after dinner, just go back to my room, pack up, and just drive away? It just because they didn't have any hold over me, but they did. Uh, yeah, Yeah, somebody said here, it says here, I got a comment. I've done a lot of self reflection. Kudos, because it's damn hard when you don't like what you see. Well, let me just say that to quote Chris Christopherson, freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. And sometimes you just got to get to the point where you have nothing left to lose. And I had nothing left to lose. So that's kind of where that was at. So, okay, we still have 89 people. We've lost a couple. I'm going to consider that good for a first solo live stream. Well, I did that one the other day, but that was I kind of ran out of shit to say too early. Um, Here's a comment. Your answer to my question described a cult when you stay with something that goes against your heart. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It really is a cult. It's nothing. I mean, the way that it holds you, the way that it keeps you trapped is amazing. And it's like I was talking with Jeff Levin about this. When you first leave, you think that the decision to leave is going to carry you through, and that all you have to do is wait for the adrenaline to die down and you'll be fine. But that's when you start to realize how much of your identity has been lost. And so the most of the work you need to do is in finding who you actually are, which is not an easy thing. And then the farther away you get away from it and the more and more you discover who you are, the more disbelieving you are that you were ever involved in anything like that. I mean, most people like Jeff Levin and others that I speak with have been out far longer than me, and they just laugh when I say that, because the longer you're out, the more you look back and you think like, what was I thinking? I mean, even with me, I mean, I had a job, I was making good money, and but still. So where is that one? I gotta. Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, the nurse who loved me, 89. Someday, hey, would you email me and give me the backstory on your handle? I'm really curious. Um, yeah, thanks. I would love to go to Tasmania. I've heard nothing but good things. I've always wanted to go to Australia. And wow, we're going on an hour and 45 minutes, but that's good. As long as you guys are interested, I'll hang in with you. Yeah, tomorrow, the 4 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, I'll definitely watch that. My email, you can email me at, it's in the show notes, Scientology, the big lie at gmail.com. I spelled it wrong. Okay, I'm not even going to do that. Scientology, the big lie, all one word, at gmail.com. And if I like your email, I'll give you my personal one. So it makes it easier. Just kidding about that. Nice. I'm delightfully interesting and cute. I'll take it. I'll take it. You got any more of that? I could I could use some more. My dog is like my dog hates kibble, and my dog is eating kibble as a way of saying, okay, I give up. You're not going to feed me the good stuff tonight. You know, if it wasn't for the psychotic person that I was dating, I never would have gotten that dog, but at least something good came out of it. But I got to tell you, beagles are very food driven. So that dog can be completely satiated and then smell our dinner and just go crazy because they're just driven by food. But they're so smart and stubborn. I would not recommend to anybody ever getting a beagle, but I was never a big dog person, so I don't know really a lot about dogs, but he's like, he kibble and bits. um, I'm sorry I wasn't able to come up with one good confession. Maybe I did and I didn't even realize it. Uh, but I'm definitely keep doing this Saturday night confessional. I'm definitely going to keep doing it. Did you leave personal belongings? I did. And it kind of pisses me off. I left my autobiography of Leni Riefenstahl, which really pissed me off. I bought a used one on Amazon, but Leni Riefenstahl, the Nazi propaganda, she worked with Hubbard on a film script. He helped her to rewrite one of her scripts. And I spoke with Miscavige about that. And as a result of that, he sent me a ton of data on Leni Riefenstahl, which I will be writing about. There's been Tony Ortega wrote an article about her, but I have correspondence between the two of them and her assistant. It's really fascinating stuff. So I'm going to be releasing a lot of that stuff. But yeah, personal belongings. Yeah, I had I hated packing every week to go up there. So I would just buy 2 of everything. I left a bunch of clothes and stuff, and I left some books, but most of my stuff I'd been bringing home because for quite a few years, at least 5 years, I no longer considered gold someplace that was safe for me to be or that I would be for long. But yeah, I did leave a lot of stuff there. Fortunately, I I didn't leave this. Fortunately, I remembered to take this with me, which is there was only 35,000 of these books printed, the 5 C's of cinematography. This is a first edition with a dust jacket and a more info card, so it's quite valuable. This is a book, this is not the copy, but it's a book I had in film school. And it's kind of a standard film school text, and it's a great book. Excuse me. And Hubbard was really big on that book. They got permission from the publisher to make copies, and they made all the staff learn from that book. So, which was like, I was like, hey, I'm good to go. You know, we studied the same thing, but they called it different things. That's kind of another story. I actually had to do some training when I went up there. It was so weird. Like, how's this? So they hired me because they'd been trying for 15 years to get a film done, and they couldn't. So they hired me because I could. I knew how to make films. But before they would allow me on their set or near their equipment, I had to take all their basic film classes. And so I spent 2 weeks, 3 weeks up there. I was being paid, so I wasn't really complaining. But I had to go to study every day and take these film courses. But at least I learned like the difference in what they called things. Like they had some different ways of doing things, but at least I got familiar with that. So, but it was pretty crazy. And then when I got out, I guess it was a couple of years ago, Jackson Moorhead, you all know Jackson. Um, he called me up. He heard that I was speaking with my old friends. There's this group of people from the early 90s when I first went to Gold who all have left. And they all left by 2000. A lot of them left by 95 that were really special good friends to me, people that I really liked. And some of them went off to have very successful careers in media, and I wished I had left with them because they all called to thank me for teaching them so much stuff that allowed them. It was from stuff I taught them that they were then able to go leverage that into careers, and they're still really good people, and I've spoken with a number of them. One of them was a producer, did like Nike commercials. Another one became like did political stuff or like media, film, video kind of stuff. Another guy, was a lighting guru. Really interesting stuff. But so yeah, this is all about leaving personal stuff there. I don't know how I got into all that. I lost my train of thought. But one of the more important things I took was all of the Leni Riefenstahl papers, which David Miscavige gave me. And I have, hold on one second. Here's the book where she talks about, where Leni Riefenstahl talks about Dr. Hubbard, the wonderful man who has a million followers all over the world, and he's a famous writer in Hollywood. Her assistant, who was at St. Hill, sold her all this bullshit. So then she got with Hubbard, and they rewrote a script of hers originally from the 30s. And then I told Miscavige about it, but he knew all about it, so he sent me the script, and a whole bunch of Hubbard's handwritten notes about writing. And nobody can accuse me of stealing it because I have a note from Dave right here. Here's the data, Mitch. Love, Dave. So I'm covered there. They can't send their attorneys after me and say he stole that, because I have the gift card that it came with. So anyway, that's something I've just been trying to find time to dig into. It's not a scoop. Other people know about it, but I've literally got the letter that Hubbard wrote to Leni Riefenstahl's assistant, accepting the saying, yes, I would love to work on the script. What are you doing, puppy? I would love to work on the script, and it's a pretty amazing letter. I've excerpted it in my book because he talks about his career in Hollywood, and nobody outside the church has ever seen this letter in whatever 70 years or something. So, okay, just emailed you, Mitch. Nothing. I really appreciated somebody who said, whoever I forgot, I forgot. I just forgot that I forgot. What does this mean? You saved the books. My kind of people are ones that would try to save their books. LOL. Well, I mean, I saved that book because it's like I studied about Leni Riefenstahl when I was in film school. I was always fascinated by her. She did Triumph of the Will, if you're not familiar, and for Hitler, hired her personally in 1937 before the war started. She did Triumph of the Will, considered to be the greatest propaganda film of all time. She did Olympiad, which about the 34 Olympics, I guess it was, which forever changed the way the Olympics are perceived and presented. And just because she was so much an ideological filmmaker, I was always fascinated by her. And then I ended up working for Scientology, and I'm like, all of a sudden I could really relate to Leni Riefenstahl. Not that I'm comparing myself to her as an artist. I'm comparing myself to her as, not as the level of art, but as an artist being seduced into the opportunity that Hitler gave her or that Miscavige gave me. It's not that different. I mean, I don't relate to Scientologists like Nazis. They're not Nazis. I mean, they don't kill Jews, but there's some other reasons that they're not like Nazis. But I'm not defending them either. But I didn't really save Scientology books. I have a few, but those ones I didn't save. Fortunately, I had a few that I needed for research, but I wish I had more. I know. But I know people that I can call. I can always call Mike or Chris Shelton. They have really good libraries, so I can. What does it say? Yeah, they were the L. Ron Hubbard training films. I'm not sure. Yeah, the answer is whatever. I'm not sure, Jenna, what you mean. But yeah, the ones that I made were. That was one of the things that I did. My kid's trying to call me. I have to. I gotta just send him a text. Well, I think this is definitely one of the better Saturday nights I've had in a while. Okay, I'm going to embarrass Jessica. Okay, okay, good. Well, throwing a little love your way, Jessica. Okay, words of wisdom for the day. Thank you, Steve. Absolutely true. Yeah, Dr. Hubbard. Yeah, so in the book, she, God, I should have, did I not? I didn't tab this. Yeah, I'll show you. This will really crack you up. So if you don't know who Leni Riefenstahl is, I mean, you can watch Triumph of the Will on YouTube. And even if you've never heard of her and you don't think you've seen her work, you have, because her Triumph of the Will is the most excerpted film on what the Nazi Party looked like, that's used in every documentary you can imagine. Let me just HI, so it would be like HIJ. But this is going to really crack you up. This is worth. It's right near. Okay, Hitler. It's after Hitler. She was like really good friends with Hitler and some of the other dudes. I think she was 448. I think she was having an affair with him, not with Hitler, but with Goebbels. Can you imagine? She was like a Nazi groupie. Okay, here we go. So a lot of this book is about her quest, a good section of it about her quest to remake her film, The Blue Light, which was a very famous film, her directorial debut from, I think it was 1935, maybe 37. She directed it, she started it. It was a huge hit. It was a beautiful film. And so she says, uh, Philip, Philip is her assistant who was a student at St. Hill. Philip wrote he had found a gifted American author to collaborate on the script. This American, he enthused, is a brilliant and famous writer who has written many screenplays for Columbia and Hollywood. He is also the head of a great international organization that is spread across the entire globe and has over 1 million members. His name is L. Ron Hubbard. He is a psychologist and Scientologist. Yep. So I was pretty mind blown when I read that. And like I said, I will be writing more about that and about Hubbard's reaction to him being put in touch with Leni Riefenstahl, and about how what they did is also a window into Hubbard's perception of his own film career, which was completely non-existent almost. It was minuscule, nothing, not even a footnote in Hollywood. And he was only in Hollywood for 10 weeks, which, I'm sorry, any job you have for 10 weeks, that's a job you get fired from. It was a great opportunity to write about all of Hubbard's film crap. Let me see if there's anything else. This says, Mitch Brisky, were you at an OT level? Were you told about you? Other planets, what did you make of that at the time? Yeah, I did through OT5. I did it. I finished it in 1990, and I never did any more auditing once I went to gold because nobody has time. And plus, I kind of didn't want to go past then. I got really disgruntled with the whole thing. Was I told about UFOs? Oh, yeah. Plus, I was at Gold. So I was with all these people that had worked with Hubbard, and they talk about it. They say, "Oh, I remember the Hubbard this and Hubbard that," and the stupidest, silliest stories. And if Miscavige would ever catch wind of any of the staff talking about, "Oh, Hubbard told me this or Hubbard told me that," he would just ridicule them and make, because that was really looked down. It was like a way of getting status that you didn't really deserve. I can say I was very good friends with Annie Tidman, uh, probably as close as you could be friends with a Sears member, and Annie, who, she was the last one of the last people to see Hubbard alive, and she worked with him since she was 12. Never one time I heard her mention that she'd worked with Hubbard. One time I was having a really bad day, and Hubbard came up, and Annie came up to me, and she said, "I was having a really bad day once when I was a kid on the ship, and Elrich came up to me and he said blah blah blah, and it made me feel better." And it was the only time she ever mentioned it in all the years that I knew her. So yeah, but I heard a lot about the Marcabians, and these guys. People at Gold are hardcore. They're really into fucking UFO shit, and it's the most homophobic place I've ever witnessed in all of my contacts with Scientology. Like an organization like Celebrity Center, they're going to be very guarded about their homophobic beliefs and feelings, but at Gold, because they're behind barbed wire, and it's like, they just let it rip. I mean, they are the stuff. Staff used to tell me it was insane. And I didn't mean to get off into all this, but I used to challenge them on this on this thing about homosexuals being, one, and I had all kinds of really great arguments that it takes the time to go into. But one of the stupid arguments I would get was, well, if everybody was gay, then nobody would procreate and the race would cease to exist. You've all heard this like really stupid piece of logic, which is nonsense, because same-sex couples having children or adopting children, I mean, that's just not even a problem. I had two lesbian neighbors who had maybe this is wrong to say, but they had an artificial insemination baby, and they were great parents, and blah blah blah. But this person who was my assistant for years, she's like, "Yeah, well, if everybody did it, the race would cease to exist because they wouldn't procreate." And I said, "Yeah, but if everybody joined the Sea Org, nobody would procreate because kids are forbidden and the race would cease to exist. So you tell me, how is being in the Sea Org different than being gay when it comes to procreation?" And she said, "Well, that's different, right? That's different because we're trying to clear the planet." Anyway, so yeah, it wasn't just UFOs that were discussed up there. It was yeah. Anyway, thank you, Leslie Bishop. Thank you so much for this comment. I'm just going to put it up because I want to acknowledge you for it. Please keep on. Your willingness to be so open in spite of your journey out of the cult is refreshingly honest and real. We're behind you 100%. That really means a lot. Means more than a super chat, but I'm not monetized anyway. So, okay, let's see if we got anything else. God, you guys are committed. I love that. We've got more people on now than when we started. What did Goebbels' wife think of that? Do I have that wrong? Which one was the propaganda minister? Was it Goering or Goebbels? I think it was Goebbels. And the rumor I heard is that because he was the one that brought her in, was the propaganda minister. That little short-guy, little cripple dude. And if you go online and you Google Lenny Riefenstahl, you'll see some just like home movie pictures with her and Hitler. It's just, and the thing about Hubbard collaborating with her, I mean, it was in 1960 when he wrote the letter back to her assistant saying, "This is awesome. I love that script. Let's do it." 1960. Okay, so like it was only 15 years after Germany surrendered. Like that's less time than the movie The Titanic was released, and we're still talking about that. Like that's kind of fresh in our memory in one respect. So, I mean, 15 years after Hitler supposedly died, uh, Hubbard was like, "Sure, I'll work with you. You, the one who made the Nazis look so cool." So anyway, I by the end of my career at Gold, I had gone full on Leni Riefenstahl. At the end of the war, she was accused of being the German word. My German pronunciation is terrible. The word is Mietlaufer. I don't know if that's right. What that means is it translates as Nazi traveler. That's a person who supported the regime either out of cowardice or opportunism. And I got to tell you, my final years working for Scientology, I was a Scientology traveler. I supported them out of opportunism and cowardice, and now I'm just trying to come back from all that. You used to drink a beer called Goebbels in high school. It was dirt cheap. Wow. I wonder what that was all about. Yeah, right. Hubbard, a psychologist, right? That's I know. You gotta laugh at that. Okay. Bad dad joke of the night award goes to Denver Steve. I had to shame you there. I hope you don't mind. Yeah, it's so that argument was dumb for a bunch of reasons. Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that I couldn't tolerate after a while, like that the cognitive dissonance that it took to be in Scientology. And I've explained this before that we Scientologists were not like a monolith. Like we all weren't right wing Republicans who voted for Trump and hated gays and blah blah blah. Some of us, I mean, my parents were beyond liberal. They were probably communists back in the 50s. I mean, the FBI did used to take down license plates of everybody that came to our house. So that is a true story. And I've talked a little bit about that in my book about anyway. But I was brought up in an extremely progressive household. Why, and I would consider myself politically very progressive. I know we don't like to do politics in this community. Very pro-gay rights, and there were others of us too. We were this like minority in Scientology that were, but it's just it was bullshit. I mean, it's my dog. He's having fun howling at the moon. I hope you can't hear that too loudly. Uh, yeah, some of the other stuff I heard was so hateful, and it was just they really believe it. There's a chapter in my book called "A Scientific Basis for Hatred" or for hate, because the tone scale is the philosophical idea which underpins their view on homosexuals as being what they call aberrated. And I had endless discussions with Sea Org members about how this is just absolute fact, scientific fact. It's a little like what the Nazis did with what's it called? Oh God, I know so much about this. With their scientific the science underpinning the racial superiority, which was eugenics, which was actually invented in California, believe it or not, back in the days in the 50s when we were sterilizing black male prisoners in the state of California. But yeah, anyway, so it has a scientific basis like eugenics does, like this fake science. Uh, what does it say? How far along are you to becoming monetized? Oh, are we going to talk about money? I'm not actually that far. We can, thank you. I'm maybe, well, I have over 1,000 subscribers. I think I'm close to 1,600. I'm amazed that mine's grown so slowly. I think it's because I was so narcissistic, and I mean, I was kind of a big deal in Scientology. Like Jeffrey Augustine was like, when he heard I left, he's like head exploded because it was like, there's no way Mitch Briscoe is never going to leave Scientology. But I had actually been psychically out for 10 years before I left. But yeah, so I just have a little under 2,000 watch hours. So I'm a little over 2,000 short of monetization because you need 4,000 watch hours and you need 1,000 subs. So, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it because Lord knows I could use the money. Not that anyway, whatever. I don't want to, I'm not just here to make a buck, but if I can, that would be fantastic because I really do need the help, especially during the strike where I can't even look for work if it was out there. But I'm really looking forward to getting my book done and getting it out there. I tried to get it published, mainstream. Uh, I spoke with one publisher who'd done some Scientology, very important Scientology book, but they don't want to. The people that I spoke with, they don't want to publish another Scientology book unless you're a celebrity or you work with Hubbard every day. And I mean, those people are done. I mean, I don't know, there's no celebrities that are going to like write books. And there's no people the people that worked with Hubbard every day who were still up at Gold at End, they're going to die up there. I mean, they're not going to be coming out and writing books. So, but this one publisher turned me on to, I was unaware of the whole Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing. And when I researched it, I went, oh, this makes so much sense. Like what has happened in publishing is what has happened in the music business. Is you don't need, an artist doesn't need a record company anymore because there's other outlets for publishing your music. So even though unfortunately it's Amazon, but hey, unfortunately it's Spotify, so whatever. So hopefully that'll all work out. It'll be out first, ebook and paperback, and then I will immediately start producing an audiobook, which I'm going to try to get through as fast as I can. One of my kids is a very talented audio musician, and he knows his way around tools, and he's offered to produce it. And so I'll be recording like mad, and he'll do all the editing and stuff like that because I'm really looking forward to speaking my book. And I've directed a ton of audiobooks for the church because nobody else could fucking do it. It just pissed me off. You don't know what it's like sitting there for 8 hours a day, like coaching somebody on how to do Dianetics book. What else do we got here? You guys are so committed. I love it. Tell Mitch how to get sleeping hours. Yeah, I need that too. Thank you that saying that about my voice. I'm very self-conscious about it, especially because I'm getting older and it's not as strong as it used to be. But I think it's more authentic. I mean, when I was watching, I don't know if you guys watched the reaction video I did to the Ron Miscavige video that I did, which I mean, I never knew that was going to go on a hate site. I did it for 2020. It was just supposed to be a response to them. I thought that would be the end of it, but I should have figured they'd repurpose it all for a hate site. I didn't even know about it until somebody pointed it out, and I looked at it, and it's like my voice was so like I was kind of manic and nervous, and I was like, who is this guy? It was crazy. So I guess maybe I could like read stories to people, like these celebrities. You can get them to, do a Jack Nicholson impersonation to say happy birthday to your mom for $20. Maybe I should do fairy tales, and um, I could, help people sleep with my soothing voice. Yeah, I understand Denver, Steve-O, that nobody likes their own voice. Yeah, it's because we hear it inside our head. But then even when I hear it recorded, I really don't like it. Although I've got my mic set up with the right audio software, and I really tweak the shit out of it, and I actually don't mind it too much. Oh, Roanne. Yeah, so yeah, Roanne's a friend of mine. Actually, I haven't seen her in a while, but we text to one another recently. Um, Roanne ended up in cine in painting. She became a set painter, and the set painting department at Gold is highly skilled workers. They had some training. That department was trained by some of the best scenic artists in Hollywood. There was a guy who was the head of the scenic department at 20th Century Fox, and 20th Century Fox probably has the best scenic department in Hollywood. So there's some very skilled people there. And Roanne became, she was working there as a maybe 13, 14. She started working there. And she's a few years older than my younger son. When my younger son was in middle school, and when Gold was a bit looser, um, uh, I used to bring my kid up there. He was in a theater arts public school. He was in the theater department, and he would come up there. They would let him work in the shop, and he'd paint sets and help them build sets. And he loved doing it, and because he was learning stagecraft, and then they would help him with his sets. They would donate to him um, huge pieces of styrofoam, and they teach him, help him know how to make sets for his school plays. So he ended up working with Roanne in the painting department, and he and Roanne became really good friends. And when Roanne left, and my son wanted to know what happened to her, and I couldn't really say she escaped. She's now free, and I'm really happy for her, which was how I felt. Um, yeah, somebody mentioned my backdrop. Yeah, that was painted by one of the artists at Gold, and they're pretty amazing. Uh, if you saw this from 2 inches away, it'd blow your mind how many different colors and how much detail there is in it. Which, when you put it out of focus, it gives it all that depth. But so when I came out, one of the first people I contacted was Roanne, and it turns out she lives 5 minutes from me. And she'd run into me at the bank one day, but I didn't see her, and she didn't feel comfortable coming up to me anyway. Roanne is a dear, dear person, and the first thing I did was I gave my son her number and had him call, and then they got to continue on with their friendship, which is really a beautiful thing. She's just a great kid. Um, so yeah, I worked with Roanne, and Roanne, she was like my daughter, like I adopted her, like my teenage daughter, because I'd see her like every day. She was in the sets department, and the guys in sets, because the art department at Gold was kind of irresponsible, and I say that because like the guys in sets and the guys in props, they'd come to me and show me their stuff. Like, hey, are these colors okay? Is this texture okay? Is this prop okay? And it was just annoying because there's supposed to be a production designer over the whole thing, and then they just take care of all that. So I ended up interacting with the sets department a lot, because looking at their stuff, because the art department was useless in production design. I don't know what they thought their job was, but that's a whole nother story. Um, yeah, yeah. This is you're right, Steve. It's like I always say. People say the camera never lies. The camera only lies. That's one of the reasons we love photography, is because it just never tells the truth. I mean, it can capture truths that are lost on us, but it's not like people say the camera is. If it's not lying, it's because you're doing extraordinary work. If you just take a picture, it's a lie because it distorts everything. That's my piece of philosophy cake for the evening. And thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I promise I'm not going to say, I don't need, what do they call that, a catchphrase? I guess I don't really need a catchphrase. I don't need what do I know? I grew up in a cult. Although I used to say, what do I know? I went to art school, because that was like the equivalent, because but I think we've hit 2 hours. We're going to bring this to a controlled landing. So I'm going to like drop the gear, pull is the flaps up or down. I forgot. And so let me just head down here and make sure I didn't miss anything. If I did, yeah, philosophy cake, you like that? I heard that from a Russian woman. She once used that term. She gave me some advice and she said, that's my piece of philosophy cake for you. And I absolutely loved it. Okay, so I'm going to put the flaps down and I'm going to drop the gear and I'm going to tell you guys thanks for joining up with me tonight. Thanks for being such a great community and thanks for helping me heal. And I can't tell you how much it means. And I'm going to be doing this again, and I'm going to be doing something else really soon. As I think I said at the beginning, um, I have a couple of people that I'm going to bring on that I think are going to really blow your mind that have never spoken out. One of them was in a different cult, and I think it's going to be like super, super, super cool. So thanks. And this is me signing off. Good night, everybody. And I promise if I haven't answered your question and I see one afterwards, I'll answer it. So take care, be well, and take care of each other.